Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. As always, this episode comes from the teachings of our amazing friend and shaman in residence, Kriket. We hope you're enjoying these podcasts as much as we enjoy making them, and I'd like to take just a moment to ask you if you would please leave us a rating and a comment in iTunes or whichever podcast player you're listening to us from. Giving us a rating and sharing this podcast with others is the biggest way you can tell us that you like our show. Now, without further ado, on with the episode.
Well, hello to my constant listeners. I hope you have been well during this latest period of time we have been separated. Welcome back to my semi-constant listeners. I'm not sure what inspired you to listen to this particular episode, but I hope you enjoy the mental amble through the meadows of Kriket's mind. And to my brand new listener, welcome. It is a pleasure to have your new set of ears here to listen to some of my insights and some of my thoughts. This particular topic for me has some challenges to name. I want to talk about the betwixt and the between. I want to talk about the archaeomythological lack of archaeomythological language in our culture, some of the perceptions that we move through. So there are a myriad of subjects that I want to go through with you and share some of my thoughts along the way with you. There are so many distractions in our daily life. We all know that it can often be a challenge to pay attention to any one thing. Uncertainty is defined as a state of being uncertain. Now that narrows it down considerably, doesn't it? Yes. A synonym that I like is dubiety. Dubiety is a feeling of doubt. Doubt means to be undecided or skeptical. Skepticism is a huge albatross weighing down our ability to live freely with our senses, with our thoughts, and our experience. Uncertainty rises when we doubt we have all the information. Do we have all the tools? Are we smart enough? You fill in the blank regarding how uncertainty creeps into your mind and can certainly infect your world. Uncertainty plays a huge role in shamanic trials and tribulations. How do we remove dubiety from our day-to-day lives, let alone our shamanic or spiritual practices? How do we use all of our senses to focus on one issue or one problem at a time? Where is resolution? If we find a resolution, can we live with or implement that resolution? Even writing about certainty left me uncertainty. Seriously. I had to scrap my plans a couple of times because I doubted I could effectively teach what I thought would be a great idea. I had to live the principle of dubiety to come to a place of certainty. It's an interesting ride. How do we use all of our senses to come to a clear and decisive decision or message? I don't have a definitive list of ideas, but I am certain I have come up with some skill building exercises that benefits you, benefits me, in the real world, no less. We have 5 recognized senses: the sight, taste, hear, touch, and smell. Some of you may be challenged, many of you may not be, to use your less honed senses to evaluate situations differently. When we work in groups or when we speak to each other, when we have communication, when we can talk about our ideas together, we can change how we perceive something. We deepen our relationship to the world around us if we can also gather other people's perceptions. Not everyone's perceptions are going to specifically be within your realm of, oh yes, this is so my truth, to nope, that has no resonance within me whatsoever. How do we gather different perceptions? How do we move through the world and change our own perceptions? How do we trust our perceptions and not doubt who we are, what we're seeing, what we're doing? We can often delude ourselves when we're seeking answers, whether we are deluding ourselves because we don't have faith in our perceptions or we don't gather information from all the sources available to us. We want to see things differently, more differently than we want to see from a singular perspective. We want to move past our boundaries of sense. We are taught, rather stringently I might add, to sort things out. Sometimes we've got to arrange our experiences or knowledge. Sometimes we move it into a logical fashion. But ultimately, you cannot deny that we categorize our experiences. I saw, I heard, owls mean, quartz does. As we move, I think, between your ears and my ears, we can likely agree that the world is not just what it seems on the surface. But how can we take this learnt understanding, or perhaps an innate understanding, even deeper? How can we apply it to our own experience? If you heard that owl, you then will look quickly for it. And after you have found it, you're likely to have a physical experience. You will likely associate it with a spiritual meaning you've assigned to it. I could go on, but I believe you get the meaning. We categorize our experiences based on our understanding of how things work. Uncertainty, dubiety arises when we don't either trust our observations or can't fully interpret or apply our knowledge. As just a couple of examples. There are a whole myriad of reasons why we don't trust our observations. If that's the case, can we change uncertainty to certainty if we analyze a situation externally and internally? In order to do that, there is a special spiritual place that we talk about, the betwixt and the between, hearing with our heart, between the senses. Fog, smoke, mist, clouds. Can you think of where I'm going? Watched any movies? Seen your own mysterious events? Fog, smoke, mist, cloud, dramatic cliches, perhaps even a standard for our expression or experience or how to share what the betwixt and the between looks like. They're all inherently shapeless and shifting in form and substance. Each one is an ethereal composite of more than one element: air, water, heat particle, and the light that passes around them. I talked more about this last episode when we talked about water, and I talked about the 5 states of water. So if each is ethereal, and each is a composite of more than one element, then they are elusive wanderers, and they seem to belong to a world of their own, merely passing through ours. They're always verging on their own extinction, hanging on to a momentary existence within our visible worlds by the frailest of means, and they disappear. No trace. Shores, riverbanks, and lakesides, they're places of otherworldly inspiration and visionary experience. Here 3 worlds come together: air, water, and earth. The exact conjunction of where one realm ends and another begins is not clearly discernible, for the line between them is constantly changing, much like our perceptions, constantly moving, constantly shifting, our perceptions disappear, and sometimes some deep perceptions and profound insights leave absolutely no trace. And don't lie to me and say you've never had a God shot and then went, what the fuck did that just happen? And what message? How come I lost it from one breath to the next? I know we all have that experience. Welcome to the betwixt and the between. Betwixt and between allows us the opportunity to experience a change in consciousness, albeit at times it is in a very limiting way. Through the years, I have witnessed many people come to the wilderness retreats I used to have as objective observers of nature, as well as objective observers of their own inner life. And I've seen that time and time again. Indeed, my own self, I have been an objective observer of my own inner life too. When we can approach ourselves and nature with humility, respect, and even openness, especially openness, it becomes possible for a change of consciousness to occur. There is a Canadian naturalist was by the name of Seton, and I used to teach a process called Seton Sitting, and I know I've talked about it in other podcasts. My constant listeners are probably nodding their head going, yes, you have. The proper substance, Seton Sitting, is to simply observe. Thomas Seton was a naturalist, went out into the woods, sometimes took a chair, sometimes didn't, would sit and would observe nature. So I encouraged the people that I would teach to go out into nature and just sit for an hour. It was interesting how many people would take sketchbooks or different objects in order to occupy their mind. That was never the intention of the Seton Sitting. The Seton Sitting is to quietly observe. You know, if you're a hiker or if you are a camper or someone who likes to go out in the woods, when you go out into the woods and you sit in the trees, it takes a few minutes, some words about 20 minutes, before the birds actually come back. That's just if you can find a semi-secluded place in nature, or even if you're lucky enough in wilderness. The intention of the Seton Sitting is to take the urban mind or the closed mind or the lack of peripheral vision mind and to expand it to see the different layers of what nature looks like. Can you actually stare into those small branches and then branches disappear and behind there's a big poplar tree or a big evergreen or whatever happens to be there? But in order to merge with nature and to merge your perception with nature's perception, remember that perceived and the perceiver. We are watching nature. Nature is watching us. Does nature change when we watch it? I don't mean from a Schrodinger's cat perspective, but I mean, does nature shift and change to accommodate you when you sit down? Has the grass shifted? What has actually impacted that grass shifting? What does the nature look like if we just take the time to see it? And I know some of my constant listeners that you are nature buffs and you know this language well, but there may be some of us who aren't as familiar with that aspect of Seton Sitting, stopping, sitting, observing, breathing, just observing, and moving back into the body and into spirit, into the body, into nature, all the while trying to be as conscious as we can. Doing this, it is an actual transformation of consciousness. For a time we hear, taste, touch, and smell differently. Stillness opens a different mind, leaving your ego temporarily in the background. With our ego out of the way, we can temporarily blend with another aspect of the world around us, be it a leaf, a smell, a sensation. Some of the exercises that you can do are devised to intentionally place your consciousness betwixt and between, intentionally and purposefully. Examples: being between a leaf and a drop of rain, or the shore and the water, or between the candle and the flame. These meeting places are conjunctions. In these conjunctions, we experience intentional and purposeful transformations. When we are working with our stones, if we work with stones, if we throw stones or portable altars, or we work with anything, we are combining our energy field to the energy field of the sacred objects that we use. Why am I bringing this up? Because this is also a place of the betwixt and the between, the conjunction. We are experiencing a transformation. If we're outside and we're using stones and we collect 7 stones and just toss stones as a form of divination, we are working and experiencing that transformation within the elements. That betwixt and that between place can move with us. It doesn't necessarily have to be fog, smoke, mist, cloud. So exactly how does one get betwixt and between? What factors can affect the level of connection you get with that space in between? In a sense, we access our ability to shapeshift. It's not exactly a process of the eye allowing you to see the space between the shore and the lake. We send our energy body out from us. In order to slip into the betwixt and the between, we must get out of the head, a task which we all know is much easier said than done. In this instance, in this case, in this motion, in this movement, we're essentially entering into the imaginal realm, creating a placeless, timeless field in which we can enter the betwixt and the between within ourselves. In my view, shape-shifting requires reshaping the imaginal realm whereby consciousness becomes objectified in some other thing. Shape-shifting is conscious as object. Journeying is conscious as landscape. When we shape-shift, we are entering into the spirit of animal, plant, or object. Differing percentage of our consciousness can flow into and merge with the consciousness of the elements in front of you. And what does that mean? What does that mean when I say that we are shape-shifting is consciousness as object? Think about it. We are shifting objects, whether that object be a body, whether that object be a thought, although thoughts really aren't objects, but you get my point. So whether we're shape-shifting and moving our consciousness into that perception of the shore and the waters, into the perception of the leaf and the drop of rain. This is how we're seeking it. This is that aspect that we are consciousness as object, journeying as consciousness as landscape. If you are a visual journeyer, you will see likely many different forms, many different shapes, many different places. If you're a kinesthetic journeyer or an auditory journeyer, then you're going to experience the landscape as you experience it. If you're kinesthetic, how does the body feel within it? Can you feel the shift in the energy around you? Can you feel the coolness? Can you shift your consciousness to accommodate what you cannot see? Can you shape-shift your consciousness in the journey state to create a concrete place, a land, an energy, a relationship? These are the questions. These are the questions that I think of when I think about the deeper aspects of the betwixt and the between. Shape-shifting occurs on an energetic level. However, depending on the density of the vibration of a specific energy field, the shape-shifting can be more or less obvious to the physical senses. Traveling through the betwixt and the between is energy shape-shifting. Some of us enter these luminal spaces naturally. The trick then is to learn how to control it. For others, it can be a more difficult task to move between the mind and the space not the mind. To a certain degree, we are all shape-shifting all the time because our thoughts and emotions affect our energy field, the energy we project and the energy others perceive. Sometimes We do this intentionally for a specific purpose. For me, I direct my energy through a raised eyebrow. It is the energy of, okay, be quiet, sit down, pay attention, listen. It's one of my teacher faces. The energy of the raised eyebrow and all the other energy I project about it is an energetic shape-shifting. We're moving from a social place or a social gathering before a circle or an event or a ceremony, and I stand in the center and my eyebrow raises, and within very, very little time, the conversation stops, everything goes to a whisper, and people quietly, slowly gather, shape-shifting the energy, moving the energy through. Relationship to space, relationship to time. Your physiology will, on the other hand, also affect your neurological response. For example, standing like a gorilla will tend to activate your reptilian brain. Seriously, try it. It'll create that optimal state if you have to engage in, if you have to engage in something physical, then I'm assuming if you're standing in a gorilla state, you're also empowering and bringing up my imaginal relationship with the silverback gorilla. I can't imagine having that force. So what would that shape-shifting be if you're moving into a situation of fight or flight, and fight is the only option? So this is that shape-shifting as well, that bringing in of energy, that moving of energy to create a different effect, to have a different effect. Trance postures. Grandfather bear comes to mind for some. Trance postures, the betwixt and the between, has different faces and different facets. Our attitude has a very strong impact on what we experience and conversely do not experience. If our ego tells us this exercise is hard, or even worse, stupid, it will more than likely affect the transition between states. Alternatively, our ego is engaged in how easy this exercise is. However, the personal self actually struggles. When I just sit and deeply breathe with intention, my ego takes a back seat for whatever will happen. But that's a trained behavior. Sitting in breath, bringing my mind to stillness, bringing my energy in. This is, again, moving between that betwixt and between, shape-shifting within the energy. So I ask you to ask yourself, or keep these questions in mind. What do you hope to gain from shape-shifting into the betwixt and the between? What experience do you expect to have through this practice? And some of you are going to say, I have no expectations whatsoever. I go, bullshit. Okay, it's just, now I'll get to the third thing. How long will it take you to notice a shift in consciousness? Sometimes I'm pretty aware that my consciousness is shifted, and sometimes I'm dozy and go, oh, wait, I see things differently right now. How long have I been vacant in my own body? I know you're likely have never ever done that, but I've done that. When you hear the word shape-shifting, what are your feelings? Do you have a physical sensation with your feelings? Do you feel it anywhere in particular in your body? Do you get a sense of, when I think of shape-shifting, I call into mind what I wish to shape-shift into. So if I wish to shape-shift into jaguar, my body changes and I can feel the different energy. If I'm shape-shifting into a ball of light to get somewhere very quickly, it is a completely different sense. It's different vision, it's a different knowing, it's a different mode of transportation, obviously, right? Physical, animal, speed of light, blah, blah, blah. We get that. However, the differences are still tangible. We can logicize it, Kriketism, all we like, but ultimately, in the end, there is that unexpressed, unexplainable relationship and shift in self. And last, how will you know when you're doing this correctly? And that, my dear listener, I'll leave up to you. Believing in our perceptions is one of the most important gifts we can give ourselves. I know you've heard this before, but we really, truly do talk ourselves out of sacred experiences. Acceptance is one of the most important internal tools you can keep handy. Work with your senses to understand yourself on a deeper level. Face uncertainty in your life for all sorts of reasons. The tools to navigate through ourselves are essential if we are truly meant and desirous to step forward spiritually. The space between our body and our emotions is a betwixt in between. That space we don't go, the place we don't even acknowledge exists, that space where our emotional, physical, spiritual pain exists. It is that space that I like to work towards. Now, my natural reaction is to recoil from that space or recoil from those deep emotions, especially when I first began this work. If I ignore it, surely it won't affect me, right? I'm sure you've said something similar, not quite those words maybe. But, if I close my eyes, you won't see me. That's one of my favorites. That works only for so long before avoidance fails. And failing reflected in the mental and emotional realms. As an example, constant pain is a battle, the battle that does not stop the pain. Rather, pain then becomes an emotional hurt, turning further into struggle with the pain itself. Shifting our attention to the betwixt and the between, moving into acceptance, removes blame, criticism, and denial. Avoidance compounds our suffering. I want to move back a bit to engaging those places of the in-between. I want to go back to consciously sending your spirit out from you to the place between the rock and the water, the shoreline, between the leaf and the raindrop, whatever that betwixt and that between is, rather than just think about the space between the rock and the water. There are really two different kinds of awareness, and with practice, you will understand the difference quite clearly. If you merely think about the place betwixt and the between, you will not experience in transformational experience. You won't have that shape-shifting real, that magical or that mystical impact. This will elude you. You may discover that you can't stay out there for more than a few seconds at first. But with practice, you'll be able to stay outside of yourself or merged in a different way for longer periods of time. Practice both elements, water and rock, fire and wick. Experience how each is different. So take those concrete things, put them concretely before you, sit yourself, breathe in breath. For me, that's one of my center ways. Breathe in my breath, bring myself to my center, and consciously move myself out of me. Because again, if we just stay within the intellect, then the body and the brain, they don't get it. It isn't magical or mystical. So moving yourself. You may discover on your first forays outward to the element, your experience might be best classified simply as a mood or an atmosphere that feels different because you've moved into an energy field created and shared by non-human elements. You bring with you your own energy and mood, so a combination of thoughts and feelings. But when your energy mingles with the energies of rock and water, the experience is noticeably alien to what you're accustomed. Repeat this practice with the rock and the water and the flame and the wick over a period of few days and try to describe your sensations between and with the elements more accurately each time. Another method of the betwixt and the between is to journey to meet the spirit of a place. This is a betwixt and the between method. Use a small drum or a rattle because these sounds are traditional ways to call the spirits. They also cover outdoor noises and help you to keep your awareness focused. So this is an outdoor exercise. So those of you that are a little bit nervous, I'm going to encourage you yet again to go outside in nature. While sitting in a spot, select a place betwixt and between that involves a land feature whose spirit you want to meet. For example, If the feature is an oak, focus on the place between the root and the soil. If it's a creek, select a place between the rock and the water. If it is the leaves, focus on the space between the leaves. While sitting at the spot, select a place. Observe the betwixt places in your breathing for a few minutes to prepare. So, what are you looking at? And with each breath, just allow all the various hats you wear about yourself to just be flung up in the tree above you so that you don't have to pay attention to who you think you are, who you are today. It's all just clear. Who can I be in this moment? When you're ready, send your consciousness into the place in nature and request that that element or feature that is the spirit of the place respond to you in some way, begins a dialogue or merging so that you can learn from it. This is all part of the Seton Sitting. This is all part of the preparation of perception, of trust, of not judging yourself. When you've ended your engagement with the spirit and you've brought yourself back and you take a nice deep breath, you come back into yourself. Might take a couple of times. Remember to thank the spirits. Remember to be honorable. To encounter the spirit of a large area, such as the spirit of a valley, a mountain, a gorge, a bay, you can adapt the betwixt and the between method too. And when you feel ready to go betwixt and the between, instead of setting your consciousness out towards a specific spot, allow your spirit, yourself, your soul to get bigger and bigger. So breathe in your smallness and breathe out your largeness. Breathe in that largeness and breathe out even larger. And continue to move the energy beyond your physical boundaries of shoulders and arms and thighs and head. As you expand, call the spirits of the land or the spirits, whoever you're calling, to join you as you sit between them. Oftenly, you will feel one or both of them close in and around you. Sometimes I feel like it's crowding a bit with their presence. Sometimes I even get the sense that they're absolutely gigantic. And sometimes they are absolutely gigantic. Continue to be there with them, just as you would hang out betwixt and the between elements in a smaller space. Continue to breathe. Continue to experience beyond those physical senses. So experience with that sense that you're developing, that betwixt and that between. Allowing the ego to fall to the back and allowing you to experience. At some point, when you feel comfortable, ask them to let you meet the spirit of the entire area of which they're part. And you may discover two feature spirits fade out and shapeshift into one spirit who is the spirit of the place. Spend time with that spirit, getting to know it as you would on a standard or a regular type of journey with a drum. And again, as always, when you're finished, thank the spirits, withdraw your consciousness back into yourself, do some nice centering breaths, bring yourself back to presence, bring yourself back to space. And that is another method of meeting a larger spirit. The betwixt and the between takes courage in yourself, not courage to put yourself out there, but courage to believe in yourself. Remember, there are many distractions in our daily life, and it can be a challenge to pay attention to any one thing. Remember that uncertainty plays a humongous role in shamanic trials and tribulations. By practicing, by trusting yourself, by moving from one direction to another direction, we then have the ability to believing in ourselves, If there's such an uncertainty in how we are, how do we remove dubiety from our lives? How do we use all of our senses? How do we use them if we don't practice? How do we use our intuition or trust our intuition if we don't use our intuition? How do we use our relationship to the whole if we don't understand our relationship to the whole? And that is a lifelong journey. I'm not saying that tomorrow I want you all to go out and to experience what the whole is. Like, fuck, I don't even know what the whole means to you. That's a whole other word that would requires a big metal steamer trunk and shove it in there and then we can unpack it. I don't know. I'm asking you to trust yourself. I'm asking you to be okay with uncertainty. I'm asking you to give yourself credit. I'm asking you to be uncertain. I'm asking you to create a relationship that you feel comfortable with Spirit. What that looks like for you is completely different from what it looks like for me. How it feels to you is completely different to how it feels for me. On those exercises and some of my perplexing thoughts and wandering ideas, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for your wonderful presence. To my constant listener, I will check in with you in 2 weeks' time, you know that. For my semi-constant listener, I'll check in with you the next time you decide to take a spin and listen to my meandering thoughts. And to you, brand new listener, if you've stuck it out all the way through, congratulations. And I hope that you return and will become a semi-constant listener or perhaps even a constant listener. Thank you for your awesomeness, your sweetness, your kindness, your thoughts, your wisdom, your insights. And it has been a pleasure to spend time with you. Sayonara.
Thank you again for joining us here on the Shaman's Way podcast. If you have any questions, would like to make a request for a future episode, or if you're looking for other shamanic resources, including free drumming tracks, please visit us at shamansway.net. Until the next episode, be well, everyone.